Good afternoon and evening, everybody joining us. Good afternoon and good evening.
Hi, everybody.
Good. Hello, how are you?
Fine, thanks.
We welcome everybody into our international meeting room for our discussion this afternoon. I'm just waiting for everybody to come in. If you have the ability to add to your Zoom name what country you are from, if you could, that would be great, because I'm going to be breaking everybody out into some smaller breakout rooms, and I'm trying to have them be diverse, representative of people from different countries in each breakout room. If not, I will do my best guess on where everybody is from. I just want to add that little bit of housekeeping into this beginning of the discussion. Thank you, Mr. Aiden. Appreciate it. My name is Christina, and I am with Atlantic Institute here in Greenville, South Carolina. We represent the entire state of South Carolina, and we came up with the idea of this discussion a few months ago to bring people together from different parts of the world to discuss some different cultural perspectives. And we kind of thought that the best way for us to understand each other from different perspectives is not from social media and from what we see on the internet, but perhaps it's much better for us to meet in person and actually have a real live discussion. And so that was the purpose of this event that we have put together. And I'm sure we will have a couple joining us shortly, but I wanted to introduce to you guys Mr. Aiden Enal from Cape Town, South Africa, and let him explain to you a little bit about what the Turquoise Harmony Institute does, since that's our partnering organization in South Africa that is helping to provide this presentation.
Good afternoon to our friends from the US, and good evening to friends in South Africa. Thank you for joining to this important discussion. And I say important because firstly, it's cross-continental. We are reaching out from almost from the bottom of the world to the far west of the world. And I think especially South Africa offers great opportunity in terms of the topic that we are discussing today, peaceful coexistence, or as we call it, social cohesion in South Africa. As you all know, South Africa has come out of a very troublesome history of racial division, and since then the country has been struggling to bring together people of different races and different backgrounds. And therefore, the people of South Africa have accumulated a lot of experience in terms of how to deal with these differences and how to bridge differences across faith, across religions, across racial differences. So it would be great to hear from our panelists from South Africa, to hear what their perspectives are in terms of and how they see what the challenges have been and what the opportunities are in South Africa. And then also we are looking forward to hearing from our friends in the US, how they are coping with trying to bridge these divides in a time when it has become a matter of urgency, that we find new ways of living together. We find new ways of coexisting. Otherwise, we might be facing some really big troubles in the future. So thank you very much for joining. As we said, we are representing Turquoise Harmony Institute. We focus primarily on bringing people together and getting them understand one another. So as you see behind me on our motto, it says, so we may know one another. So that's what we try to do. We try to do things so people know more about one another. So thank you very much, and back to Christina.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And if you want to see behind me, it says creating bridges of understanding. Um, just so that we know, we are very much aligned together in the mission that we are all working towards. So I'm looking forward to this discussion. Atlantic Institute has been in a nonprofit in the US, in South Carolina here for at least 10 years. And we create all sorts of different dialogue events on a monthly basis. And we've been doing everything virtual for the past year. So we've been really fortunate to take advantage of some of the negative effects of not being able to get together with COVID. And so now I'd like to turn this event over to Dr. Orr. He is our volunteer director for the Columbia Atlantic Institute organization. He's going to introduce our speakers that we have with us. So Dr. Orr, if you could share a little bit about yourself and go ahead and introduce our speakers.
Sure, thank you very much. My name is Uğur Kurşuncu. I'm a volunteer director of the Columbia branch of the Atlantic Institute, South Carolina. Maybe before I start, I can talk about a little bit how we came up with this idea actually about this event, because as far as I know, this is a new format for an event actually that we organized so far. And if you might remember, before COVID, Atlantic Institute used to organize some trips to other countries in the world. It can be South Africa, for example, it can be Peru, or it can be Turkey, for example. And most of the participants used to describe these trips actually as 10 pounds in 10 days. So this is not actually the goal, actually, just gaining 10 pounds in 10 days, but it is more about like learning about the culture, learning about other societies, learning about other people. And the most striking highlights of those trips actually were meeting the local people and learning about them actually, how they live their lives, their lifestyles, their families, and so on, and making real personal connections actually. And after COVID just came onto the picture, so we brainstormed some ideas actually. So we couldn't actually organize such events right now, but how we can do it like virtually, and how we can bring people together from different parts of the world and make connections, make real connections as much as possible, so that we can, if maybe we cannot actually substitute those trips and those real connections, maybe we can actually establish or facilitate some environments, some networking opportunities. So, so the people from different societies and cultures can actually connect with each other, get to know about each other, and understand each other as well. And that is going to lead us to a better society and a better world. So without further ado, let me introduce our speakers. We have 4 speakers from South Carolina, United States, and 2 speakers from South Africa. And I'm going to introduce the speakers from South Carolina. And the first speaker is Dr. Andreen Bird. Dr. Bird has lived and worked in several diverse international countries, including Zimbabwe, India, and the UK and the USA. Andreen currently works at Union Presbyterian Seminary, teaching courses in history and interfaith relations, and served for 3 years as chair of Interfaith Partners of South Carolina, working to build bridges of understanding with partners across the state. Adrian has many published chapters and articles and is the author of M.M. Thomas and Dalit Theology. And please join me welcoming Andreen Bird.
Thank you so much. Or is this my turn to speak now?
Sure.
I did not know I was going first. So thank you for that very, very kind introduction. I was so delighted to be invited to be a part of this conversation. As you just heard, I've spent many years in different locations in the world, and those experiences have really formed me through those personal encounters that I've had, been privileged to have in India and Zimbabwe and in the United Kingdom. And honesty, I'm a Christian. I travel the world working with and alongside the church in India and in Zimbabwe. But the questions that were raised in those personal encounters, issues of human hierarchy, issues of the question, who is beneath me, which was a question that was raised for me very sharply in India, particularly relating to my research into the caste system there. One of my colleagues had said, the human question that we need to address in the 21st century is that question, dismantling the idea of who is beneath me. And that's really stayed with me. But through those experiences, I decided that I needed to go and ask some questions. When I came to the United States, I joined a seminary, and I really wanted to find some Christian answers to all of the issues that I had. And so I went to a seminary to ask those questions and to hopefully get Christian answers. And lo and behold, I just had more questions rather than answers, because I realized that the people that became my new heroes within Christianity, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was one, and also, of course, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was another, that these great heroes within, if you like, the Christian tradition were pointing me out to the world. They were pointing me out to people from other traditions. So I had to scratch my head a little bit, but if we look at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life, this is a man who, of course, was a leader in the civil rights movement, raising the awareness and the attention of people about, you know, the major issues of racism in our context in the United States. He walked alongside one of his dear friends, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, from the Jewish tradition. So when I see these images of the two of them walking together, already I start thinking, maybe I don't need to be just boxed into the Christian tradition to find my answers. As well, we see Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s influence, was certainly influenced by the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. So again, another example of me trying to find Christian examples, my Christian heroes pointing me somewhere else to be in dialogue and partnership with other folks. And of course, Dr. King was able to bring in that idea of nonviolent active resistance to face the tragedy of racial hierarchy here in the United States. And then finally, when Dr. King won the Nobel Peace Prize, which of course is a major recognition of the work that he was doing in collaboration with men and women in the civil rights movement, he was asked who should win the next Peace Prize. He had that privilege, seeing as he had been a recipient of the award. And he said that the next person to win it should be Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist from Vietnam. So there I am scratching my head thinking, wait a minute, this is not what I bought into when I came to Christian seminary. I wanted Christians to give me Christian answers. And again, people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and others of my heroes kept pointing me away to new dialogue partners. They weren't telling me to leave the Christian tradition. They were telling me that by connecting with people outside the Christian tradition, that my Christian identity could in fact be more formative, that I could be grounded there, and yet we could work more constructively together in finding solutions to some of the catastrophic problems that we need to deconstruct in order to reconstruct collectively. So from that moment on in South Carolina, I looked out for an interfaith group, and Interfaith Partners of South Carolina were kind enough to allow me to journey with them. And I've had the privilege over the last few years of being part of a network of interfaith leaders, all willing to work together to find solutions to local problems. Folks who come from international backgrounds, from different cultural backgrounds, who celebrate the richness of our diversity and a commitment and a passion to make a difference here in our local context. So I know that time's an issue. I hope that was at least a little bit of an introduction that we could maybe carry on into our breakout groups a bit later.
Thank you very much, Dr. Burt. Thank you for sharing your experiences within this context. And let me introduce our next speaker, Mrs. Catherine Fleming Bruce. Catherine heads TINOSA Global Commons, which focuses on preservation and culture. She chairs the newly formed National Coalition Delegation, a group of former delegates from around the US and abroad elected to the 2020 Democratic National Convention. The organization will support civic engagement on public policy, democratic institutions, and the US Constitution. Catherine is the author of The Sustainers, Being, Building, and Doing Good Through Activism in the Sacred Spaces of Civil Rights, Human Rights, and Social Movements. In 2017, she became the first Black author to win the University of Mary Washington Historic Preservation Book Prize, awarded by their Center for Historic Preservation. Bruce and her work have appeared in US News and World Report, National Geographic Traveler magazine, the Post and Courier in South Carolina, and South Carolina Public Radio. And please join me welcoming Mrs. Catherine Fleming Bruce.
Hello, thank you so much for that wonderful list of things. There's so many things that we're all doing, and we hope we're doing our best to contribute to the dialogue. So I'm going to speak briefly about peaceful coexistence from a perspective of history and culture, and also politics. One thing South Carolina has is what we might call a hidden tradition of protest and challenge. We very much have a veneer of politeness. And so looking at other states during the civil rights movement in the American South, we prided ourselves on not having a certain kind of protest that appeared on television, the people marching in the streets and all of that. We said that didn't happen in South Carolina. Instead, we went behind closed doors and had dialogue and created outcomes that way. Well, it turns out that that history of protest was hidden, and it's recently being uncovered. We've talked about the Briggs versus Elliott case. That was a school desegregation case that became part of Brown versus Board of Education that desegregated America's schools. We also have an uncovered case called Edwards versus South Carolina, where Black students from several colleges protested peacefully on the grounds of the South Carolina State House, where all of our political business is done by our legislators. So that was in the 1960s. A number of students were there. All of them were arrested. And that case went up to the US Supreme Court, where they were, all of the charges against them were overturned because their peaceful protest was acceptable in the eyes of the US Constitution. So today we have many things that are no longer hidden because of the COVID pandemic. We have racial inequity, which was the subject of a lot of protests around the world. We have economic instability. We have a number of other issues, access to healthcare and things like that, that have been uncovered by the pandemic. And so one thing that will make it possible for us to have peaceful coexistence in this circumstance is the idea of a shared struggle. So if all of us can look into our past, our nation's past, the past of our continent, the past of our religions, and look at examples of struggle, we will see that often there's a shared basis for that struggle. You know, we're struggling around the area of making sure everyone has enough to eat. We're struggling for equality for all of the people in a community, regardless of race or ethnic origin or religion. We struggle for women's rights and for the right to land and health. So we can look at the struggles of South Carolina. We can look at the struggles of South Africa. We can look at the struggles of other parts of the world and see that a lot of times we have a shared basis for our struggle. Many in other countries can draw inspiration from these struggles that are happening, from seeing people stand up and work out ways to move forward as a community. So these are some of the main controversies that I think might be put to the side if we say, but we don't want protests, we want everything to be peaceful. We can figure out ways to make the struggle peaceful, especially as governments, as institutions, and as other organizations that have a lot of decision-making power in our communities. Those organizations can decide we're going to allow people to come together and speak their minds. We're going to allow access to the internet. We're going to allow free access to the vote. We're going to make sure that people understand that we are trying to create an equal society. So when governments and institutions and organizations work together to do this, then we can have a stronger sense of peaceful coexistence as we work through our struggle points. Now, as you can see behind me, these are people lined up in the 1940s in Columbia, South Carolina, when a decision was made by one of our state courts to reject the idea that political parties would not include them. So after this case, all of these folks were lined up to vote, many for the first time. So we can look back at that particular history. We can look at our more recent history, which this is a scene from just a few months ago. And we know that we cannot have a conflict that rises to this point. It's a very dangerous idea. So instead, we're going to have to look to our institutions again, look to our leaders, our spiritual leaders, our political leaders, and our cultural leaders to remind us of the shared struggle that we have together, remind us of the history that we have of saving these spaces where these things have done. That's one of the things that my book was about. The Sustainers was about the process of preserving spaces of people like Dr. King, where he was assassinated, which is now a museum, where Malcolm X was assassinated in New York, which is now a museum, where Medgar Evers was assassinated in Alabama. That is now a museum. So again, these are places, and there are many places like this around the world. Nelson Mandela's prison, the prison that he was in, is also featured in the book that I did when that was transformed into a museum. So we have those cultural places to help us look at that history. And from there, I think we can find the proper pathways to move forward.
Right. Thank you very much for the inputs. Can I go on?
Yes, please
All
go on.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much to our friends from the US for the very valuable inputs. Now we will have two speakers from South Africa. I'm first going to ask Ms. Najma Kota to speak. Ms. Kota has been in the media space and civil society space for a long time. She played important roles in broadcast media, radio, and she's been involved in the practice of integrative health practicing, and she's also a trauma counselor by training. So she has a vast experience in terms of observing the South African society and how it has been changing. So we will now hear from her what her perspectives have been on peaceful coexistence in the South African experience.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's lovely to be with all of you. And it's great that we can connect this way. It's also part of our social cohesion experience. People from the US, and we have Turkish nationals that are in our country that we're so grateful to have with us. So together we all share a fantastic history, I would guess. Okay? And having heard from our previous speakers, I just must comment, Catherine, on your backdrop there. I was trying to figure out what it was, because it caught my attention immediately. But what it reminded me of is, now first I had to figure out, is that a South African or an American? Before you came on and I saw it, because I actually thought that was a picture of our first democratic election in South Africa. And that actually was such, as you know, a poignant moment for all of us as South Africans that lived through apartheid. And it was the turning point for us. So I can speak on my experience as a Black South African in the apartheid era, and how, as you know, segregated we were. So much so that we lived in our own pockets of our own communities, so to speak. So the Indians were in their own area, colored, so to speak, Blacks and whites. And so we were forced to live with our own communities, as it were. The group areas Act did that, and I must speak from a very personal point of view. I grew up in Johannesburg, South Africa, and very close to the city. We lived in a very humble little suburb where we lived with Chinese community, Malay community, the Indians of different ethnic groups, religious groups. There were whites also. And the Group Areas Act then forced us, we experienced forced removals, and some of the people were sent out to Lenasia, which is an Indian area, and Soweto, which is the Black area, and El Dorado Park, colored area, and there we lived. Our schooling was also segregated. We had, the standard of our education was also not equal at the time. So I'm saying all of this to you is because we were born activists, so to speak. You had to fight for your rights. You had to stand up in some way for equality and for justice and against oppression. So when the big day came for South Africa, we had to start, what I'm seeing now actually is a sense of complacency, because somehow South Africans, I feel, have now lost that inspiration or that drive to struggle towards something more, something as powerful as we did during the apartheid struggle. But then there were efforts being made, and there are still efforts being made from the hierarchy, shall I say, of government and coming down to the NGOs and so on that work towards this Ubuntu, which is well known cultural value in the African tradition. And so it's living in harmony, it's cohesion, it's respecting each other, and of course, forming that peaceful society, non-racial, and I think that the non-racial part comes out more significantly because we were divided racially. But we somehow ignore also the fact that there were ethnic divisions, there were religious divisions, and not because we believe that. You know, if we speak in the religious context, then it was because we practiced our faiths in our communities freely, and that was never something we were stopped from practicing. And so the advantage of that was that even though we were living among the Indian group, we were with Hindus, we were with Christians, and we were with Tamils as well. So when we went to school, we had the opportunity of learning about those cultures, those faith, you know, and the practices. And I always say to the new generation that we were more cohesive in the way we lived in the past, because, yeah, it might be contradicting what I just said earlier, but because we grew up with not having any thought about the division in society. So having said that, when I moved into the broadcast industry, there again, it was something I couldn't do because of my, in the past, I couldn't take up that as a career because of the color of my skin. So as soon as it became possible to do so, I went ahead and went on to radio, only to find that in my own society, in my own religious society, I was told that women's voices were not allowed on air, which was un-Islamic. It really is not an Islamic rule. So here I was fighting for women's rights, as it were, in the context of broadcasting, and then pioneered women's voices on air. And the activism then shifted for a period so that we, you know, there were divisions even there. So the cohesion that I had to now you know, enforce in a way through discussion, through dialogue, through having programs that touched on these topics to change the mindset of people. And that was a huge challenge, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, because what came out of that was that we had the proactiveness of people who believed in the same thing. So we take for granted that, you know, it might be that everyone is racist or everyone is anti this, anti that. But when you really connect like we are today, you find that all of us are on the same level of thinking when it comes to connecting with society, connecting with everyone. Now, the Free South Africa, and we call ourselves the Rainbow Nation. And I must say, I'm very proud of that as a South African, because I have seen in my experiences through whether it was in the medical field, in the hospital context, or in the broadcast industry, wherever it was, I found that I learned very heartwarmingly that everyone actually does have that innate quality of respecting and loving each other. So I think it comes down to back to just the individual and the human connection that we need to then, you know, foster. So just today, I presented a workshop at a school not far from where I live, and it's predominantly a colored community. impoverished. I was presenting a workshop to teachers there. And, you know, when I stood there today and I thought about this topic for this evening, and I saw social cohesion at its best this morning, because we had a white presenter, Blacks, Indians, and we all speak different languages, by the way. But also, what I noticed, because I was conscious of it and thinking about my topic for tonight, I think I just became more aware that of the people that were managing this whole workshop that we had today was a Hindu, Christian, and a Muslim. And we all just worked together. So for me, I think it's about highlighting that and becoming more conscientious of our own spaces first, to enhance that which we believe in and that which we are together for this evening. In the broader sense, yes, it's a huge struggle for the South Africans, I must say. And the South African government is trying very hard to get the social cohesion policy. They actually have to have the policies in place for this, because we also have an added problem in our community, in our country, with xenophobia. So discussions like this are extremely, extremely important for, so that we can highlight that and create more and more awareness on how we actually are disservicing the societies we live in by not speaking up, by not saying something about it. And it doesn't have to be a placard demonstration, a protest as such, which we're so used to as activists in the past, right? But I think we've evolved into a different type of struggle and activism. And if we can call this a form of activism that we're doing now, then I truly believe that we can make that difference through organizations like the Atlantis Society, as well as Turquoise Harmony. And hearing all of you speak today, I'm sure will inspire and motivate us to continue with this type of dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Kota. This was good. I was actually sending her a message that she must please wrap up in a minute, and then she ended. Okay, well, our other speaker from South Africa is lost somewhere in the South African mountains. So I can't get hold of him, and he's been posting photos from one of the mountains. So I'm just hoping he hasn't fallen off somewhere. So, but in South Africa, we've got full of skills, and I'll show it to you now. I've just in the meantime, I've asked someone else to share perspectives with us. Now, with us, I see on the list, you don't know them, but from South Africa, we've got really good quality people. I'm going to ask Mary Frost to speak for a few minutes. Now, Mary, in Cape Town, we've got an institution called Cape Town Interfaith Initiative, which has been going on for about 20 years. And its chairperson is also among us, Reverend Berry. And the Cape Town Interfaith Initiative has won King Abdullah International Interfaith Week Award about 2 years ago, I think. So, and they've been doing great work. And Mary has been with the institution since the beginning. So she has a lot of experience in terms of how the interfaith relations have been shaping in South Africa, and specifically in Cape Town. So I've asked her quickly to share her observations with us. So I'm sure she will give us an excellent perspective. Mary, and thank you very much for accepting my request in the last second, actually, not even a minute.
Good evening, everybody, and it's lovely to be with you. To give you a little bit of history, in the late 70s, during the dark days of apartheid, interfaith dialogue was initiated, and it was a form of solidarity against apartheid, and it brought religious leaders together when they were in jail to pray together and to support each other and their communities. And that grew, but it was only between the Abrahamic faiths, Muslim, Christians, and Jews. And in 1999, the Parliament of the World Religions was held in Cape Town. And out of that, in the year 2000, Cape Town Interfaith Initiative was born. And the important thing about that is that it involved all faiths and people of no faith. So it was an umbrella for all faith communities to be involved. And we have many portfolios, but interfaith dialogue has been persistent in this, trying to create awareness, to learn about each other, to address social issues, as Catherine was saying, all our struggles. And as you know, the interfaith movement has a huge power in doing this because it's a peaceful organization. And we have our pilot program at the moment is a schools program, which is wonderful because we are creating awareness in our youth and helping them understand the different faiths, learning about each other, and they're realizing that by building these bridges and respecting one another, we can all get on together and do stuff together instead of in our pockets. As Najma was saying, people living in their pockets are so used to it. They're not used to crossing over into other cultures or learning about other cultures and appreciating them. So we have many portfolios. We take people to different sacred spaces for them to understand and see and learn. And it's a very exciting project. It's very challenging because there are very small fundamentalist groups who really don't agree with this and are afraid. So we try to break down stereotypes and fears by continuous dialogue and awareness and education. And I'm sure you might have lots of questions, but I hope I've given you a little bit of an idea of our work here, and it's very successful and it's growing. And through this virtual medium, we are expanding our footprint, which is wonderful because we can share all our problems together and try and help each other and encourage each other in this interfaith work. Thanks.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mary. So that was one of the examples of the great work done by a group of committed people in Cape Town specifically. And it is, I believe, now expanding to other parts of the country as well. Okay, so that's it from us in South Africa. Dr. Oor, we're back to you.
Sure, Krishna, take us to...
I'll take over. I have everybody in breakout rooms. I'm going to go ahead and start those in a second. We have 20 minutes at most in a breakout room. There's a moderator in each room. If their name of the breakout room has their name on it, so you know who the moderator is. And they should have 4 questions for you all to discuss. I just would like to say happy sharing. We hope to get, when we come back together in 20 minutes, we will have some dialogue on what it is that you might maybe learned when you were in the breakout room together, and just what hit you, what thoughts, what something that you might come away with. So I've done my best to make it as diverse as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and start opening all the rooms up now and getting you, if you want to go ahead and click to join the breakout room, that would be great. And we can get everybody sorted into them. Then we will have everybody sorted into a room and you can go ahead and get started. I truly love it when everybody comes back from breakout rooms because they have such nice smiles on their faces. They just had some good conversation. They got to share and talk about themselves, something that we don't get a whole lot of at the moment. So we'd like to make sure I've got everybody back. I hope that you enjoyed the diversity of your breakout room. I hope that there was something that you learned and got to enjoy. If I can ask, if whoever would like to share, I mean, if you'd like to, just go ahead and unmute and share something that you might have learned.
Can I share, Christina?
Yes.
Because there are some very interesting things. Apart from the very well-known divisions around religion and race, etc., I've learned that there are divisions around masks, wearing of masks, and around the vaccine. These are some important things, and gun ownership, something that actually we find some resonance with South Africa, especially in Cape Town, where we have a lot of gang violence, and the gun ownership goes with it, etc. So these are some interesting things that I've learned.
Yes. Yes, you would learn that. That means you were in a room with a lot of Americans. And I will tell you that I learned in one of the rooms I had jumped into quick. I had forgotten about the fetal alcohol syndrome major issue in South Africa. And I remember reading about this. I'm a birth doula on the side, so I help women when they are pregnant and in labor. And I remember a couple of years ago learning about that and the issues that really imposes on a society, where there's a lot of that and that they deal with. Who else would like to share?
Christina, I see. Sorry, I see Tembisa is around, so I'm happy he hasn't fallen off any mountain. So
yes,
he's alive and he's with us.
Tembisa, we thought you might have fallen into the mountains, and we're glad you're muted. If you'd like to unmute yourself and share for a moment, you can. And we certainly understand we had some issues with time today, and we appreciate everybody that was able to adjust and make it. So if you would like to unmute and share, we'd love to hear something from you as well. I'd like to go ahead and wrap up our conversation in about 10 minutes or so at the most, just because I know time is valuable to all of us. If anybody else would like to share?
I was trying to, I know I'm talking too much. I was trying to say how the alcoholism in small villages was dealt in India. I just was there a couple of years ago. What they did was anybody who is drinking doesn't come home. They were still staying out because these are small towns. They were, all the men basically would drink, and they were put in the street on one corner, square. And they will stay there, spend their night there, talking and stuff. But if they want to come home, they don't drink. And that helped them. They helped the whole town to be without alcohol within few months. I thought that is a great idea.
Wow, very interesting. Very interesting. Yes. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share that they might have learned? Go ahead.
Okay, here it comes.
Go ahead, Tembisa.
Yes, first of all, I'm so sorry for being late. It was way beyond my control. I ended up joining the meeting very late. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So I truly apologize, and I don't want to hijack the discussion in the middle because I'm not quite sure what you're talking about, and I don't want to take you back to my presentation. I just thought I'll pass forward that message of apology, and I hope you accept.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you very much. Does somebody else have something they'd like to share that they learned or that they gained from the discussion?
Yeah, if I could share, Christina,
yes.
I was hoping somebody from my group would speak, and hopefully they will after I've spoken. But I think just the importance, really, of being inspired by one another through those through personal stories. Sometimes it can be so tiring, and you feel like you're making one step forward and then you go 2 steps back. But Reverend Berry used the phrase, the points of light around the world. And what a beautiful way of recognizing the hard work that is being done by incredible people in their partnerships around the world that really can inspire us all in our day-to-day rhythms in our local context. So we've already connected, and I look forward to further conversations, which is the best thing about this morning for me. This evening, should I say, for our South African colleagues.
Yes, I must agree. Sometimes you can feel alone doing the work that we do, and to connect with those on the other side of the world really does help to see that we are, there's numbers. There is more of us. Anybody else like to share before we go ahead and end our conversation? Go ahead, Reverend Barry.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this space. It's been an amazing, amazing event so far. I just wanted to share that really what we've also learned, I think, is that in our different contexts, interfaith engagement works no matter what our context, and it has an impact no matter what our context. And I think that even though our lives may be very different, and some lives are, people have different economic backgrounds and different needs and different situations that they're facing, but somehow interfaith engagement seems to be a meeting point that lifts everybody and that feeds everybody, and a point of healing very often. So I just wanted to really support what Adrian is saying about being inspired by people around the world, and it is wonderful to hear those stories. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. I do. I appreciate it. Well, I thank you all for joining us. I don't know if anybody else has anything else to say.
Well, I guess I have to say something now that I was late and I prepared.
That's right.
I prepared something, so I'd like to share a bit of what I had prepared to talk about. I mean, I'm not going to take too much of your time. For me, it was mainly about this multiculturalism and globalism and the interfaith dialogue in trying to make the people of the world understand that there is diversity and there's also power in diversity, which is something that we often we overlook, because all of us believe that the ways that we've embraced ourselves are the way that will lead us to success. But growing up in South Africa has actually been very important for some of us, because we have a number of different cultures and religions. And a person like me, for example, who came into being a Muslim from being a Christian, Zulu Christian, I went through a number of kind of transformation. First of all, I'm culturally a Zulu person, and then I was also baptized as a Christian, and then later on I became a Muslim. And that understanding, for me, I come with that wealth of understanding and, to an extent, tolerance, that there is actually wealth and richness in all of these things. And I didn't embrace Islam because I felt there was something wrong with Christianity, nor did I become a Christian because I felt there was something wrong with being Zulu. But I now realize in my old age that in all of these sectors, there's wealth and richness and knowledge. And I think taking that to the wider world, which is what we're trying to do, is also even more fascinating, because now you begin to even understand that outside your national borders, there are other people who have experiences, and that makes you richer as a human being. So I thought that's important to share. By the way, I was the chairperson of the Christian Youth Movement when I was young, and when I became a Muslim, I was then elected to be the chairperson of Muslim Youth Movement, and that was not because of any intellect superiority over others, but it was because of this wealth of the interpollination of cultures and understanding of what religions expect from humanity and what religions are in terms of wanting to foster and promote a peaceful existence amongst the people of the world. It had nothing to do with competition. So that's briefly what I wanted to share.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thembisa, somebody was wondering where you are from in South Africa.
Well, I now live in Johannesburg, which is the big city in South Africa. But originally, I come from Zululand. Those guys who go around with the spears and who defeated the English with their bare hands. Sorry if there's any English person here.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. Even if you come on late, we appreciate your kind words and your beautiful sharing, as Reverend Barry was saying.
Last word.
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Bruce.
Okay, two last words. Of course, the first last word is my book, which is behind me on the screen, but also on Amazon, so that's there. And the second one is, I was just thinking about how long it used to take for a letter to get from South Carolina to a place like Trinidad and Tobago or Africa, where it used to take weeks. And now here we are, talking to each other in seconds. So we certainly ought not to lose the wonder of that quick technology improvement over time, but of the benefits that we can that it affords us in terms of moving closer to peaceful coexistence.
Yes, I very much appreciate this as well. The wonderful technology we've been able to have.
May I?
Sure.
A few words very quickly. Yeah, firstly, I want to thank you and Turquoise Harmony and everyone participating today for this privilege to be on this panel. I think, as I spoke earlier, that this form of dialogue is also in some way a form of struggle and activism in something that we all believe in. And I'm really very grateful for this opportunity. And I also want to mention very quickly, which I've forgotten to mention in the bio, I'm also on the board of the South African Council for Religious Equity and Diversity. And it's been an amazing journey there because I have the only female rabbi in our country. Now she's the second one. And the Christian counterpart is Dr. Nontando Hadebe and myself. And the engagement there for me was really an eye-opener because I think for me personally, it was breaking the stereotype of Muslim women, or Muslim, not necessarily women, but a Muslim person not really engaging in churches and synagogues. And so having done that myself, I think breaking that stereotype has been a step forward in forging our way towards peace and harmony. So thank you. This means a lot to me, and it's been a privilege.
Thank you all. I know we've had a couple of questions here at the end. If this group could meet again to discuss more specific topics and things. I mean, I don't mind if everybody doesn't mind. I can share emails back and forth and kind of connect everybody. You can feel free to message anybody personally at the moment too. Our hope is, I know regular meetings would be great. Our hope at the moment is to connect with other countries as well around the world throughout this year. So we will add you onto our email list, and I'm sure that there is a way that we can continue to stay together and communicate. I can work on that because I know that we have that abilities, and I should have everybody's contact information. I want to also just mention, in the spirit of being able to do things globally in an instant, that the month of Ramadan is coming up in a couple of weeks. And one of the things that Atlantic Institute here in South Carolina is going to be doing is virtual Ramadans around the globe. So we've already spoken with Dr. Iden and all in Cape Town with the Turquoise Harmony Institute about us all hosting a joint Ramadan together on May 1st. So if you want to put that on your calendar and join him and his family, I'm sure, Rabia, that you have been made aware of this perhaps already. You don't have to cook for all of us. We can just smell through the screen. Some of us, have the scratch and sniff down pat. Catherine from Mongoose is wondering how many countries are here today. If you want to type in your country in here, I do think we have countries as 2, most likely, or 3. We have from many different areas in South Africa. So I know that and India and stuff like that. So it's been a wonderful time to get together with everybody. Do you pay attention to some of the Ramadans that we'll be doing, the iftar dinners that we'll be doing? I can say I'm actually in Hartwell, Georgia, not South Carolina, but I represent South Carolina. So if you want to add another state in the US that you might have visited today, I can give you some proper representation. So with all that, I'm going to ramble on here as everybody's heading out on the boat to go fish in the lake this afternoon. So I'm going to say good evening to everybody. Thank you all for being here. I so truly appreciate you. And yes, we will come and come to your house as soon as we can all break down the barriers of masks and vaccination requirements, Rabia. We will come and invade South Africa. So we appreciate everybody being here and taking the time and adjusting to our time difference as well. So I'm going to say that is all. Have a good evening. You can unmute yourselves and say goodbye.
Thank you.
Okay, goodbye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Joy. God bless.
Tomorrow is a color festival in India, Holi.
Thank you.
So
Oh,
find
very
out
good.
in your region if there is a Holi going on. Go and color somebody. It is just
Go color somebody. Yes.
color
Yes.
somebody. So you
Oh,
have a
yes.
freedom. You feel free to
Yes.
be together with each other.
Yes.
All right.
On somebody.
Thank you.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Bye.
you
Take
all.
care, everyone. Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you for
Bye-bye.
the invitation.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Nambisa. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
for
I'm so
your
sorry
share.
for being late.
No
All
problem.
right. Glad to
It's
see you.
okay.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you too.